The zombie apocalypse already happened. It just didn't happen to us. It happened to ants and crabs and cockroaches, and there's at least one parasite on this list that has a very good shot at being in your brain right now as you watch this. These are 10 real parasites that turn living animals into obedient, walking puppets. We're starting somewhat gently as a parasite that replaces a fish's tongue with itself can be. This is a small crustacean, kind of like a pill bug, and what it does is enter a fish through the gills, crawl into the mouth, and clamp onto the base of the tongue. It drains blood from the tongue until the tongue atrophies and falls off, and then it attaches itself to the tongue muscles and becomes the new tongue. The fish just keeps eating, with this parasite acting as its permanent tongue. It even feeds on the fish's mucus and food particles while it's in there. So it's basically living rent-free in the fish's mouth forever. Is that zombification? I guess that's debatable, but I felt like it set the tone correctly for everything else that's about to follow. This one is genuinely one of the most visually disturbing things in nature, and if you look up footage of it, you'll probably agree. This is a flatworm that infects snails. It works its way up into the snail's eye stalks, and then it starts pulsating, visibly pulsating in bright greens and browns through the snail's transparent skin. The parasite is essentially turning the snail's eye stalk into a flashing, caterpillar-like lure, because birds from above see what looks like a tasty caterpillar wobbling around. They swoop down and peck the eye stalk off. That is how the parasite gets into the bird, which is actually its target host. And the snail, well, it doesn't actually die. It grows a new eye stalk, and the whole cycle starts again. The snail is a living, perpetual delivery vehicle, which is pretty unsettling when you sit with that for a little bit. This parasite was only discovered, or rather identified for what it was, in 2012, which I find kind of wild given what it does. This is a phorid fly, and it lays its eggs directly into the abdomen of a living honeybee while the bee is mid-flight. The bee does not die right away. Instead, it starts behaving strangely. It abandons its hive at night, which honeybees don't normally do. It stumbles toward light sources, disoriented, losing motor control. Researchers started calling them zombies, and I mean, that tracks. About 7 days after infection, the bee dies, and up to 13 fly larvae emerge from between the bee's head and thorax. This parasite was contributing to colony collapse in California before anyone had even linked it to the bees. It's a problem researchers are still actively tracking today. So this one requires a moment to actually process. A parasitic wasp lays around 80 eggs inside a living caterpillar. The larvae hatch, eat the caterpillar's non-vital organs, and then chew their way out through the skin and spin cocoons on the outside of the caterpillar's body. And the caterpillar is still alive. Researchers found that after this happens, the caterpillar starts swinging its head violently at anything that comes near those cocoons, driving away predators. It becomes a living, self-sacrificing bodyguard for the larvae that just ate their way out of it. Scientists aren't entirely sure how the wasp triggers this behavior. Some larvae may stay behind inside the caterpillar and continue influencing it chemically, but here's the thing. The caterpillar is protecting its own killers, and it has no choice in the matter. That's pretty insane. The horsehair worm, also called the Gordian worm, lives in water, but its larvae end up inside crickets and grasshoppers when they drink from puddles. The worm grows inside the cricket until it's sometimes longer than the cricket's entire body, basically coiled up inside the cricket's cavity. When it's ready to reproduce, it needs water, so it secretes a cocktail of chemicals into the cricket's nervous system, and the cricket, an animal with a deep evolutionary instinct to avoid drowning, deliberately seeks out water and throws itself in. The worm then squirms out, sometimes while the cricket is still alive, and swims off to reproduce. The cricket may actually survive. It just sits there in the water, having been completely hijacked and discarded. I don't know. Are they meddling with things bigger than they're letting on? Probably not, but the whole thing is genuinely wild. Sacculina is what happens when a barnacle decides killing is too simple and goes full body snatcher instead. A female Sacculina larva finds a crab, injects itself through a tiny gap in the shell, we're talking a microscopic cluster of cells, and then spreads root-like tendrils through the crab's entire body. It takes over completely. The crab stops regenerating lost limbs. Male crabs infected with it will actually start behaving like females, and parasites adjust their hormonal output. And then it forces the crab to care for the parasite's egg sac like it's the crab's own offspring, fanning it, protecting it, releasing the larva into the water at exactly the right moment. The crab never reproduces again. It just serves for the rest of its life, and that's honestly kind of a bleak way to go. The lancet liver fluke might be the most organized parasite on this list, and I mean that in the most unsettling way possible. It cycles through 3 different hosts. Its eggs get eaten by snails, who then, and this is real, cough them up in slime balls on the ground. Those slime balls get eaten by ants, and this is where it gets interesting. The fluke migrates into the ant's nervous system, and during the day, the ant acts completely normal, but when temperatures drop at night, something compels it to climb to the very tip of a blade of grass and just sit there, waiting to be eaten by a cow or a sheep, which is the parasite's intended final host. During daylight, normal ant. At night, it's a meal on a pedestal. It has no say, and that's kind of nuts, really. The jewel wasp is one of the most scientifically studied zombie makers on Earth, and it's definitely earned that attention. What it does is target cockroaches, which you know aren't exactly pushover prey. The wasp delivers 2 stings. The first hits the midsection and briefly paralyzes the front legs. The second goes directly into the brain, specifically into the region that controls the escape reflex. The cockroach doesn't die. Not surprising. It doesn't run. That is surprising. It just goes docile. Then the wasp drinks from the cockroach's antenna wound, leads the cockroach by the stub, like it's literally walking it on a leash, into a burrow, lays a single egg on it, and walls the entrance shut. The cockroach sits in that burrow, calm, alive, while a wasp larva eats it from the inside over about a week. The venom contains GABA, the same neurotransmitter our own brains use. Scientists used antidotes to this compound and partially reversed the zombification, which means we understand the mechanism. I mean, could be worse, right? I don't know. Okay, so this is where things get a bit personal. Toxoplasma gondii is a microscopic parasite that needs cats to reproduce. It's found in a significant portion of the global human population. Some estimates put it between 30 and 50% of all people carrying it, most with no obvious symptoms. There are published studies suggesting possible links to changes in risk tolerance, traffic accidents, and behavioral differences in infected people. Nothing officially confirmed, but the timing and pattern of some of this research has led to some questions. Whether you believe it or not, the idea that something might be quietly nudging behavior from inside the brain in hundreds of millions of people without anyone noticing, well, that's pretty unsettling. And here it is, the one that started all the conversations, the one that inspired The Last of Us, and honestly, the real version is somehow still worse than the show. This is a fungus that infects tropical carpenter ants through airborne spores. Once inside, it begins growing through the ant's body. And then, at a point scientists still don't fully understand, something changes. The ant abandons its colony entirely. It climbs a nearby plant. It finds a very specific height, around 25 centimeters off the ground, that provides optimal temperature and humidity for the fungus, and it bites down on a leaf vein with abnormal, documentable force. The bite mark left by infected ants is chemically and physically distinct from normal ant bites. Then the ant dies. The fungal stalk grows out of its head, spores rain down onto the forest floor, onto other ants, and the cycle continues.